Baylor football's 2025 recruiting class went a long way in saving Dave Aranda's job. Now, let's see what you got, kids.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on YouTube, Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. We're talking a lot of football in this episode, mainly the young bucks, the kids on this team, the class of 2025. Are we actually going to see some of them having an impact on the offensive side of the ball? Are we going to see them having an impact on the defensive side of the ball? We'll tell you where some of these guys can slot in as we are still right in the middle of spring football. Plus, men's basketball loses another starter to the transfer portal, and one of our crowd favorites from the last few years has a new home. We'll give you all that information and more on this episode of Locked On Baylor. We are well in the swing of spring football at this point. You know, you hear about it in basketball. The guys are freshmen until they play the first game. I got to imagine that's what it feels like for some of these kids who have enrolled early and have taken their first hits in spring football and have gotten chewed out for the first time, right? We have highlighted all the guys that are coming back this year. Excuse me. And we will continue to for the rest of this offseason. But I am enamored by this class of 2025, because as it started to take shape last year, and obviously it got better by the week, right? Like Baylor, it finishes top 40, top 3 in the Big 12. And it's like, it was really just shocking to see Baylor have that competitive a recruiting class. They hadn't had a class like that in 5 or 6 years. And they had been pretty good in between for a year or two, right? So this was kind of hailed as the class that saved Dave Aranda's job. Dave went into Mac Rhodes' office last December, or end of November, after the West Virginia loss, and put out a binder and laid it out. Actually, it was before the West Virginia game that ended 2023. Laid it out and said, here's my plan of how we're going to get back. Here's why you guys should continue to invest in me. And one of the big parts outside of the NIL and the transfer portal, things we knew he needed to get better at, he outlined high school recruiting, and he outlined Keenan Hall and what that guy could do to get his program back. And so before there was this 6-game winning streak, before there was, another bowl appearance, before even 2-4, there was this summer last year. And now the guys are here on campus. We hyped it up for a long time. I found it tough to find bad things to say about this 2025 recruiting class. And now they're here on campus. And now Baylor fans are asking, okay, what are you going to do for me? Who's going to be in the mix here? Because there's plenty of skill position guys we could look at, right? Taz Williams, Ja'Cory Watson, Edward Griffin, obviously, at quarterback, Brian Winston. He's a defensive guy, but you know what I mean. Red Armstrong, Michael Turner. Some of these guys aren't even on campus yet. So who is going to make the impact this year? And the hot name for Baylor fans anyway seems to be Taz Williams. Taz was the guy who came in with the most hype of anyone, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, maybe the most hype of anyone in the class. He wasn't the highest rated in the class, but he was pretty well sought after, the most offered recruit in the state of Texas last year. And he was the stunning one, right? Remember in July, it was Alabama and Michigan and a couple other schools, and Baylor wasn't even on the list. And then he's at his signing day at Red Oak High School, and he, spins the wheel, goes on somebody, and he goes, actually, you know what? I'm going to go to Baylor. And it was like stunning. And we knew this kid had big playability and that he was like a grade A playmaker at the high school level, at a major high school level. But he's coming off a torn ACL. And, you look at a guy like Michael Turner, the running back from Richland. He hadn't even been on campus yet. He hadn't moved in yet. Right? Demetrius Brisbane, another one, big-time athlete from Chapel Hill High School in Tyler. Not on campus yet. So, who are these guys that are going to make the big impact, the big leap year one that we're actually going to see on the field at McLean Stadium? Because this is the fan in us that it's might be a bit of a letdown if we don't see them on the field. That's not fair. But we as fans went through this whole ride last year of how great this recruiting class was. You want to see them on the field, right? Well, Jake Spavital, the offensive coordinator for yours, mine, our Baylor Bears, says, pump the brakes a little bit. And he gives you a reason why probably won't see a lot of these guys in the 2025 season.
Not very many freshmen. We've kind of looked at it across the entire country actually played. There was the receiver at Ohio State, the receiver at Alabama, dynamic guys that could play. But, those guys just kind of were very, very special players. We got some special guys too, but we're kind of just easing them into this situation. They still should be finishing up their spring semester of high school and going to prom here in a couple months. So, instead they're in a heated blitz period right now, and they're getting jump jammed and trying to figure out new techniques and the speed of the game. And I think what I've seen is them progressing each day, from where they're at day one. They're excited to be out there. Day two, they're running a lot, and their legs were starting to hurt a little bit, and weren't as fast. And today they had great energy and juice when they're out there, and they got better. And I just want to see them continue to get better and make plays. They actually made a lot of plays. I don't know if you guys are watching the end of that practice today, but those young receivers were making some pretty dynamic plays today.
So look, the ability's there. He doesn't say, no, we're not going to see those guys this year, but he puts it in perspective, right? These kids really should still be in high school. It's a blessing that they're on campus as soon as they are. And, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't necessarily that way for all these prospects. And for this case, it's for most of the prospects. So, okay, who do we have the best chance? Who has the best chance of being on the field this year on the offensive side and possibly even making an impact? My answer might surprise you because I look at Caden Knighton from Oklahoma, the running back from Oklahoma. That could be a guy who you could see early on. I mentioned about Michael Turner, who is a bit more of a highly rated running back, not on campus yet. Caden Knighton is, according to 247 Bears Illustrated, which we trust with our lives. And it's surprising to some to hear because you're probably sitting back there saying, running back? We literally just had a guy who set the freshman record at Baylor for rushing yards a couple years ago. He just left because there's too many running backs. Correct. And there's the biggest logjam on offense at that position other than quarterback, right? Because you've got Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass, two guys who on their day, and Bryson Washington most days, but both those guys could be all Big 12 kind of players. So how does Caden Knighton come into this? Well, he's a little bit faster than both those guys. Doesn't mean he's going to be a better running back, but he's fast. Brings you some lightning there. And you saw last year, Dominic Richardson entered the transfer portal in the middle of the season. Richard Reese entered at the end of the season. Those guys got touches every game. Even when Bryson Washington was healthy and in there, which he missed the first two games. Those guys always had some touches. They always saw the field. Richard Reese wasn't getting a ton of carries, and he wasn't the player that he was in 2022. But in Jake Spavital's offense, clearly they are rotating in running backs, 3 deep, not just the 2. So Dawson Pendergrass and Bryson Washington, those guys will get the shine. Of course they will. Bryson Washington is I think he could be one of the best running backs in the country this year. But Caden Knighton might surprise some people. He might, just because he's going to be on the field, he might have some opportunities to really break out. Taz Williams coming off a major injury, probably working his way back pretty well right now. But you just don't know for a high school kid to go through that for the first time, what that kind of timetable is like. Ja'Cory Watson is another one not coming off an injury, but I think one of the guys that he's talking about there, that Jake Spavital was talking about in there. So you could see some of those guys, getting some time. And I think the wide receiver depth is not as secure as the running back is right now, that position group. So you could see them, but just don't be surprised if you see some Caden Knighton out there. because I'm telling you, they like rolling 3 running backs out there. So that's the offensive side of the ball. Will we see any freshmen on the defensive side of the ball where it's probably more paramount? Well, let's go over that next on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor. But first, a word from our sponsor, 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. You remember that from a few weeks ago? Yeah, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes because of that, you need a little bit of a boost to power through. So whether you're up late watching your favorite team, you're squeezing in a round of golf after work, or you're just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever and wherever you need it. And with these longer days, I don't know about you, I love getting outside, the weather warmer, more daylight, like taking a hike, taking a run, taking the dog out. Tropical Burst is what gets me through that. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, peach mango, and of course, the Tropical Burst. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? No worries. Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. So stock up today and stay energized with 5 Hour Energy. Defense. That's what wins championships, okay? We know, like Cam, we know how great this offense is. We know how great Jake Spavital is and Sawyer Robertson and all these guys. So there's probably not going to be freshmen breaking through on the offensive side of the ball. But what about the defense? Because the defense wasn't terrible last year, but I don't think there was a point in the season where you said, man, this thing's good, other than against Air Force and the team they played first, Tarleton, right? Both teams not exactly lighting it up through the air, and you looked pretty good. You held them both to 3 points. I think that's correct. So other than that, you were not like wowed by this defense in 2024. Dave Aranda's defense, by the way. And they've made some moves in the coaching structure of that defense, and they've brought some guys in the portal. I think you'll see a lot of portal guys playing big roles on this defensive side. But what about the freshmen on that side? Because again, it wasn't as hyped as the offensive guys were. It never is in recruiting, right? The defensive tackle or the linebacker or the safety does not have the hype that the wide receiver, the quarterback, or the running back does. It's just the way it is. It's the way that football is. In fact, I said it a bunch when we were going through the recruiting. Remember, I was like, look, I can see a receiver stats. I can't tell you a defensive end, unless they're getting a bunch of sacks. I can only watch the film. And the highest rated player in the 2025 class that Baylor got is a defensive end, Cameron Morgan from South Oak Cliff. We talked a little bit about him on yesterday's show, which you can check out on the channel as well, because one of his teammates just committed to Baylor. So that's the one I'm like, I wonder where he fits in here, because this defensive line was not very good last year and really has not had a good pass rush the last few years. And here's Cameron Morgan, this big, lean, athletic kid who was getting double teams in every game of the season last year. 6'4", 230, like really positive pass rusher. But now they're moving some guys around on that defensive line. And Anoke Brechterfield was talking to the media the other day, and he mentioned quite a few names. He did not mention Cameron Morgan's. That's not a bad thing, right? That's not to say, Cameron Morgan's not going to do anything. It's just that means he might not fit into their plans this year as a starting defensive end. And that's perfectly okay. But he did mention another player, which I was caught off guard by, actually. It's a guy I watched play high school football the last couple of years, local kid. And I thought this was a good pickup for Baylor, but one of those where, local 4A football, it's a very different game. It's getting double and triple teamed. It's a very different game when you get up to the college level, especially an interior defensive tackle. Like, you've got to really beef up for that. Well, that might not be a problem for Lorena product Jackson Blackwell.
Jackson. Like Jackson is a true freshman. He should still be in high school right now. Very surprised with how fast he's kind of caught up to the group. Yet he's still a puppy. You know what I mean? And so, but very surprised with that.
Did you see Inoke? If you're watching on YouTube, did you see his face? It's like, Jackson, why eyes got all big? He goes, Jackson, that kid has caught up. And that is a great sign for Jackson Blackwell. He was not ever a small kid, in high school football. He was massive. If you saw any of his games, you could tell who he was right away at 6'2" and 305. But again, that's we're talking 4A Division II football and moving up to Division I Power 4 in college, right? That's a massive physical leap to make. And this defensive line, while they're moving guys around, there's still jobs up for grabs on the defensive line. For the way it's played the last 2 years, I know you can't be surprised to hear that there are defensive line jobs up for grabs. And Inoke Brechterfield was like, this guy's caught up. And so there's obviously a lot of other things that need to go his way, but you could see the Lorena product pretty close to right away as a situational, down and distance kind of guy. They obviously went and got Samu from A&M, who's going to be your starting nose tackle. But there could be some room for Jackson Blackwell on there. So as much as we hyped up the offensive guys in the class of 2025, the guy you might see the most is actually on the interior of the defensive line, and he played at Lorena High School, baby. You got to love that. Shout out to Lorena. And shout out to Inoke Brechterfield, by the way, because if you ever listen to this guy talk, he is like he's like Dave without the pauses. He's Dave if Dave had thought out what he was going to say. He's definitely got like the chill attitude. Like he's kind of handling it the same way. But with Dave, you really got to like lock in to understand what he's trying to say because it goes 3 or 4 different ways. And okay, Brechterfield is giving you the Dave substance right away. And I love that. And all of this to say, and we'll obviously keep track of this and hear what coaches are talking about the rest of spring ball and obviously in fall camp as well. But you're probably not going to see a ton of these class of 2025 guys. And that's a good thing because the unexpected benefit of this 6-game winning streak to end the regular season last year and how much this team really turned it around was that they're bringing a lot of guys back. They didn't lose a lot to graduation, and they didn't lose a lot to the portal. So as great as this 2025 class is, you didn't have to go and find them and put them on the field right away. That was a big unexpected benefit of this 2024 team, other than turning the thing around and being good and keeping your coach's job. I could only do offense and defense, but genuinely the guy who you might see the most as a true freshman on the Baylor Bears this year, because this position has been in flux and has had substitutions in there before. The guy you might see the most in the class 2025 this year is Red Armstrong, the #1 kicker in America out of Colorado. Just saying. That's the guy you might see and hear Derek Smith say the most on the PA. Red Armstrong on to attempt a 47-yard field goal. Like that's the name that you might hear the most. But I do want to hear what you guys think. Let me know who you think of this freshman class is going to be on the field the most. Let me know in the comment section below if you're watching on YouTube, or tweet at us at Locked On Baylor if you're listening to us wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Baylor rolls on. Some more subtractions from this Baylor men's basketball team, and a crowd favorite has a new home. We'll tell you who that is, where that is, coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But again, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You might know it as America's #1 sportsbook. I know it is just a good way for supplemental income. The tournament is here. We're still clinging on to it. And FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from the buzzer beaters to the Cinderella. And even who's cutting down the nets, okay? These tournament games, they're big time this weekend. They're happening all day Saturday, like all night Saturday. That's what you're going to be watching, right? This is a way to keep it all exciting, even if it is a chalk Final Four. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all Final Four, last Quattro weekend long. Check it out at FanDuel.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Speaking of basketball, there's more subtractions for Baylor basketball. The men's team bid adieu to Jalen Celestine on Wednesday, who announced he would go into the transfer portal after 1 year at Baylor. Remember, he came in from Cal last year. And I'm not terribly surprised by this, but it's just another guy with experience that's not coming back. You know, again, we now that limits the list to guys who played in a game for Baylor this year who are eligible to come back. Well, I guess Celestine's eligible, but guys who played for Baylor in a game this year who are coming back to the team next year. And that is Marino Dubravcic, Rob Wright, still a question mark, and a big question mark in Josh Ojamuna. You can add Cameron Carr to that because he's been practicing with the team the last 3 months here. The guy they got out of the portal from Tennessee in the middle of the season. But you are really, really scant when it comes to these guys that are coming back. And I know some fans are like, oh, good riddance, Jalen Celestine. And I get it. I think there are some Baylor fans out there that want the whole team gone because they were a 9 seed. I was somewhere in the middle. I didn't want all of their guys who were eligible to return to leave in the portal. I also understand that this was kind of a disappointing season from Jalen Celestine. You look at the numbers at the end of the season, and they weren't as bad as I thought. We were talking about a 44% three-point shooter last year in 23-24, and coming in and Baylor needing a shooter this year, he shoots 35%. Not that bad, but not what they were expecting. He goes from 9 points a game to 7 points a game. You know, he started 11, and that was out of necessity. You needed him to be a big-time rebounder for you down the stretch, and he only grabbed down 0.3 more rebounds per game than he did in 23-24. I think he was thrust into a position where his role changed pretty quickly at Baylor, and it's a role he does not want. It's tough to blame a kid for that, but I think either that or he saw the writing of the wall of how much needs to be turned around in this team roster-wise next year and said, I don't want to do that. He's going to go in as a grad transfer somewhere, 1 year of eligibility, 6'7", as a guy who can shoot from three. You know, the next Locked On host who goes and gets him is going to be talking about how he shot 44% from three last year, 2 years ago. And last year, he was, playing for a bad team in Baylor. That's the way they'll see it. But you lose a guy with some versatility. I don't love losing him, but because he was going to be a big part of your roster next year, like he was probably going to be a starter. But I was up there as one of the ones who was disappointed in Celestine this year, which is not entirely his fault, but I mean, this is sports, right? So I'm not losing sleep over it, but again, it's just another guy. It's just another guy that was eligible to come back that is not coming back. Speaking of those kinds of guys, Langston Love's not walking through that door, fans. He's not walking through that door. In fact, he is headed up to the nation's capital to play for the Georgetown Hoyas. Who is Ewing still their coach? I actually don't know that. He shouldn't be. But he goes to Georgetown, a once proud program. Fran Fraschilla had a bit of I don't know if this was a shot at Langston. He said, wow, Langston what does he say? He said on Twitter, he was responding to whatever it was, the Tipton Edits post. He goes, 8 points a game and he got a boatload. Good for him. It's a downgrade in terms of a program. Georgetown has not been Georgetown in 15 years anyway, right now. And they really haven't been Georgetown in about 20 years, 25 years. So, hey, good for him. I hope he can be healthy. You know, you don't wish that kind of injury history on anybody. You hope he can be healthy. If he is, then that maybe raises another question about Baylor, because LJ Cryer has not had an injury since he got to Houston, not a major injury, right? And if Langston Love can be healthy all of a sudden, then that would be maybe a little damning. Cryer only had one injury at Baylor. Langston had several. But I hope he can get through a season and be a veteran leader on that team. Obviously, in the Big East, it's not going to be much of a problem for us, you don't think. But yeah, interested to see what that kind of payday is like. You know, there was some questions about what it was at Baylor. And if you're a guy who can't really stay healthy, I mean, it's got to be the same as pro sports, where you don't see obviously long-term commitments isn't a thing in college basketball anymore. But money-wise, I'd struggled to think that he gets a big-time financial commitment from Georgetown. But I guess Hoya sacks it to him. Let me know what you guys think about this situation. Were you okay with Jalen Celestine leaving, or are you just on the boat of blow up the whole team and bring in a whole new roster? Because you're going to have to bring in pretty close to a whole new roster anyway. Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. That helps out the channel a ton, guys. We are marching towards 4,000 subscribers that I want to get to before football season. We are well on our way, but I need your guys' help in that. I will thank you, though, for making this your first listen today and every day. Appreciate the heck out of that. We have got some interesting football quotes tomorrow to lead off that show, unless something crazy happens. You are not going to want to miss that. We are talking about some big-time aspirations from these Baylor football coaches. We will talk about it tomorrow on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.